Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a seriously wild narrative. We're talking about a world where cutting-edge xenobotany literally collides with quantum physics. It's a story that completely flips our understanding of free will, consequence, and, well, the actual fabric of the universe itself. So let's just jump right in, shall we? Imagine for a second, what if human consciousness could prune reality like a garden? Like, what if every single choice you made wasn't just some metaphor for branching paths, but a literal, physical pruning of alternate timelines? That is the exact reality faced by our main character, Dr. Amara Kweku, living in the massive, drone-filled megacity of New Accra. Part 1. The Incident at New Accra. To see how this all kicks off, we actually have to go deep underground. Down at the Pan-African Quantum Institute, there's a lab accident that really shouldn't be possible. Let me introduce you to the catalyst for this whole thing, Aetheria kwekuensis. These are extremophile spores brought back from a planet called Gliese 667cc, which is a staggering 23 light-years away. So Amara has been cultivating this specific alien vine that she named Nyame, and on this particular night, the vine blooms. It releases these bioluminescent spores that just completely ignore negative pressure containment. I mean, they literally pass right through solid glass and absorb straight into Amara's skin. But instead of pain, she gets hit with this overwhelming flood of alien memory, visions of an older, greener Earth, and timelines that feel totally alien, but also strangely familiar at the same time.
Which brings us to part 2, superposition and the awakening.
Because right after she's exposed to those spores, Amara's mind goes through this incredibly rapid, profound transformation. To really get what's happening to her, you have to think about superposition. You know, that quantum mechanics concept where a system exists in multiple states all at once until somebody observes it? Well, this alien vine naturally exists in that state. It's touching multiple timelines simultaneously. So by absorbing the spores, Amara's consciousness actually becomes entangled with that massive quantum field. She goes from being a scientist studying a plant to literally becoming a living bridge between probabilities. And what's fascinating is how this massive, cosmic-level concept just bleeds right into her everyday life. It starts small. She'll hear a conversation before it even happens, or she casually tells her colleague, Dr. Kwekuensis, that he's going to burn his dinner that night. And sure enough, he does. But then it escalates. She prevents a major lab pressure valve from failing just seconds before it goes. She makes a perfectly timed phone call that saves a child from a speeding autocab. She starts sensing these branching possibilities exactly the way a gardener knows which shoots of a plant are going to thrive. It's incredible. But she also learns the golden rule of this new power pretty quickly. Every single alteration, no matter how tiny, causes ripples. In part 3, the helix dynamics threat. Because eventually, those ripples attract the absolute worst kind of attention. The real stakes hit during a big presentation Amara gives to the Continental Science Council. Out of nowhere, an assassin in the crowd pulls a weapon and fires. And her reaction is just terrifyingly spectacular. She instinctively does what's called a probability pull. Time basically slows to a crawl, and she literally fractures reality. For one impossible second, she's bleeding on the stage, she's standing completely unharmed off to the side, and she's floating above the room, all at once. She actively selects the timeline where the bullet misses. Reality snaps back into place, and she's alive. But man, here is the brutal catch. Doing this drains the quantum coherence of the vine. By saving her own life, she starts killing the very organism she's entangled with. It turns out that Assassin was hired by Helix Dynamics, this massive, ruthless megacorp. And this sets up a huge philosophical clash that really drives the whole story. You've got Amara and the Institute on one side, wanting to use the spores for healing and scientific discovery. And on the other, you've got Helix Dynamics. They don't want to study the Aetheria, they want to weaponize it. They want a complete monopoly on reality itself, so they can just casually prune away any timeline they don't like. Part 4. Navigating the Quantum Foam. With the vine dying and Helix mercenaries hot on their trail, Amara and her crew have to make a desperate move. They steal an experimental ship, the Sankofa 2, to try and get the dying vine back to its home planet. Now, this trip should normally take 23 years, but Amara essentially wires the dying vine into the ship's quantum sails. They aren't using wormholes or anything like that. They are folding space through pure possibility. First, they entangle the navigation. Then, the ship exists in literally every possible route between Earth and Gliese simultaneously. And finally, they collapse that massive probability field down to the single, shortest successful path. They cross 18 light years in just 11 days. It's totally wild. But as you might guess, navigating the chaotic quantum foam requires anchors to keep them from losing coherence entirely. And those anchors are human memories. The personal cost here is just heartbreaking. The general crew members, they lose the memories of their childhood homes. Dr. Menza literally forgets what his own sister's face looks like, and Amara loses the sound of her mother's voice. They're practically burning their own pasts just to buy a future. Which leads us to Part 5, the battle for Gliese. The crew finally arrives at Gliese 667c, this absolutely stunning violet world covered in crystalline forests and an ancient planet-wide consciousness. But a heavily armed Helix warship jumps in right behind them. This isn't just a shootout, it's the ultimate ideological showdown between Amara and the Helix commander, Dr. Elena Petrova. Petrova wants to use the garden's power to enforce a single perfect timeline. Amara is fighting to protect human choice, arguing that a garden has to grow organically, which means seeds have to be allowed to fail. Petrova makes a pitch that, let's be honest, sounds pretty incredibly tempting on the surface. She broadcasts this. With this, we can erase poverty, erase war, erase every mistake humanity ever made. It's the promise of a literal enforced utopia. Helix genuinely believes that having absolute control over probability is the definitive cure for all human suffering. But Amara hits right back, getting straight to the core of the issue. She says, by erasing choice, by making only your timeline sacred. She sees right through it. To get Helix's version of a perfect world, you have to kill free will. If you're pruning away every mistake, you're also stripping away the autonomy of billions of people, basically making reality a slave to whatever one corporation thinks is best. So the climax of this standoff is just insane. Standing in this living cathedral of vines, Amara opens herself completely to the garden. She takes every single memory she has left, the lullabies, the taste of home, the grief of losing her father, and uses them all as raw fuel, the whole shebang. She blasts out this massive wave of quantum coherence that literally drops the probability of the Helix drones to 0, freezing them out of existence. And when Petrova's ship tries to run, Amara just reaches right across the probability field and ruthlessly prunes the timeline where they escape. She completely saves the garden, but she pays for it with her entire personal history.
Part 6. Tending the Quantum Garden. The dust settles, the threat is gone, and Amara becomes something completely new.
Instead of ruling reality, Amara and her crew set up the first grove. It's essentially a monastery where they teach people how to listen to the quantum universe. For decades, Amara lives completely fluidly. Sometimes she's walking alternate versions of New Accra, sometimes she's just sitting with a timeline where her mother never passed away. Eventually, she fully integrates her consciousness into the planet's cathedral vine. Jump ahead 200 years, and Earth and Gliese are profoundly connected. There's this incredibly beautiful image of kids playing on quantum-entangled swings, literally pushing siblings who are on a planet 23 light-years away. To put that into perspective, that's just mind-blowing. And meanwhile, back on Earth, tucked away deep beneath the bustling streets of New Accra, there is exactly one preserved cutting of the original Nyame vine still blooming, its flowers just constantly turned toward every possible sun. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to chew on. Helix wanted a universe with 0 suffering. Amara fought for the right to make mistakes. So, think about it. If you had the power to literally prune your own mistakes from reality, would you do it? Or does the real value of life, the very essence of who we are, lie in the freedom to grow the wrong way? Thanks for coming along on this deep dive into the quantum garden with me. Keep questioning those branches of your own timeline, and I'll see you in the next one.